When you imagine a medieval castle, you probably think of royalty, luxury, and power. But the truth is far from glamorous. Behind the tall stone walls and grand towers, life was dirty, smelly, and brutally uncomfortable. Today, we uncover the disgusting truth about living in a medieval castle. Forget about hot showers or clean bathrooms. Medieval castles barely had any system of sanitation. People would throw their waste directly into the courtyard or even out of the windows. The smell was unbearable, and diseases spread quickly. Fleas, lice, and rats were constant companions of castle residents. Even the nobles who wore fancy clothes were crawling with parasites. Meals in a castle were not as elegant as you think. Food was often spoiled, and people used strong spices just to cover up the rotten taste. Meat was a luxury, bread was coarse and hard, and fresh vegetables were rare. Imagine eating the same greasy stew for weeks. Nobles dined with their hands, wiping them on dogs lying under the table. It was more disgusting than royal. Castles were cold, damp, and dark. In winter, people froze inside these stone walls because fireplaces could not heat the entire place. Smoke filled the rooms, making it hard to breathe. At night, there was no privacy. Servants, soldiers, and nobles often slept in the same hall. The idea of comfort simply did not exist. Living in a castle didn't mean you were safe. Poisonings, betrayals, and brutal punishments happened regularly. Servants could be executed for stealing, and nobles were always under threat from rivals. Disease was perhaps the greatest killer, wiping out entire families. The castle walls kept enemies out, but they could not keep death away. Movies often show castles as magical and romantic places. The reality was misery. Instead of luxury, there was suffering. Instead of beauty, there was filth. Castles were symbols of power, but they were also prisons of dirt, disease, and constant fear. Life inside a medieval castle was far more horrifying than you can imagine. Asterisk. So next time you dream of being a king or queen in a grand medieval castle, remember the disgusting truth. Power may have been glorious, but life inside those walls was anything but royal. This was Historical Memories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again as we uncover more hidden truths from history. Asterisk. Castles had something called garderobes, which were basically holes in the wall where people relieved themselves. Waste dropped straight into the moat or down the side of the castle. Imagine the stench in summer. Moats, instead of being clean defensive waters, often turned into foul sewage pits full of human waste and disease. The nobles lived slightly better, but servants had the worst conditions. They worked from sunrise to sunset, slept on cold floors, and ate the scraps left by their masters. Servants cleaned chamber pots, carried heavy loads, and risked punishment for the smallest mistakes. For them, a castle wasn't a place of glory. It was a prison of labor. We often imagine medieval banquets as scenes of endless food and joy. In reality, banquets were chaotic, greasy, and unsanitary. Bones, shells, and food scraps were thrown onto the floor. Dogs and pigs wandered around eating leftovers. The noise was deafening, and hygiene was non-existent. It was more of a dirty food fight than a royal feast. Forget about soft beds with curtains. Most people in castles slept on straw mattresses full of bugs and lice. Nobles sometimes had wooden beds with rough fabrics, but servants often slept on the floor. Privacy did not exist. Families, servants, and even animals often shared the same space at night. Castle walls were thick, but they trapped cold rather than warmth. Fireplaces heated only small areas, leaving the rest of the castle freezing. In winter, water froze indoors, and people wore layers of dirty, itchy wool. Smoke from fires filled the halls, stinging the eyes and lungs. Living in a castle often meant living in permanent discomfort. Medicine in castles was almost non-existent. Doctors relied on bloodletting, leeches, and superstitions rather than real cures. Small wounds often turned deadly due to infection. Childbirth was dangerous, and epidemics like dysentery or plague could kill dozens inside a single castle. The idea of hospitals and modern medicine was centuries away. Castles were never peaceful. Blacksmiths, soldiers training, animals, and servants created constant noise. Add to that the overwhelming stench of waste, smoke, rotting food, and unwashed bodies, and life inside was unbearable to the senses. Visitors often complained that castles smelled worse than city streets. A castle was not only a home, it was a fortress. Soldiers lived inside, drilling constantly, sharpening weapons, and preparing for sieges. During wartime, castles became overcrowded with villagers seeking shelter. Food ran out quickly, disease spread faster, and fear ruled every corner. Living in a castle during war was closer to hell than safety. Without electricity, castles relied on candles and torches. Rooms were dark, smoky, and dangerous. Fires often broke out, destroying entire halls. Candles were expensive, so most people lived in darkness after sunset. Imagine centuries of evenings lit only by flickering flames, with shadows crawling on the stone walls. For nobles, castles symbolized power. But with power came paranoia. Nobles feared assassinations, betrayal by their own knights, or rebellion from peasants. Many rulers trusted no one, even within their family. Castles might have looked majestic, but inside, fear and distrust poisoned daily life.